Welcome back to another episode of Macrodosing. This is going to be a very fun one. Today, we're getting into a topic very near and dear. I'll say this. I think that we're going to see the reemergence of Smart Billy today. I'm pretty confident. At least we're going to see Passionate Billy come at us because this is a topic that's near and dear to his heart. It's biohacking. We're going to be talking about CRISPR. This is Billy right now is like a 1-year-old golden retriever that you've left in a pen all day. Then you come home from work, he's just shaking with excitement. He's got all sorts of questions. So it's going to be a great episode. We're going to get into some fun stuff, some crazy stuff, I actually think. Then we've got our first interview here. We're going to be interviewing Josiah Zayner. He's a doctor. He's a biohacker. He's a controversial guy, but he's done a lot of studying, and he's actually participated in biohack. He biohacked himself. So it'll be fascinating to have that conversation with him. Before we get into everything, because Billy's just absolutely ready to go right now. We were talking right before we went on the air about how somebody needs to biohack the hiccups. Because I've had the hiccups a lot recently. I don't know what's going on. And then Coley just told me that he cured the hiccups. Not that he has a cure, that you cured the hiccups. How did you do that?
Listen, if you Google Coley Mick, hiccups come up, I believe, is the third thing these days. It's in the top 5.
Okay, Coley Mick, Coley Mick, Barstool, Coley Mick, feet pictures, Coley Mick, hiccups. Yep, you're right.
Yep, those are the top 3. So back in December, Marty Mush tweeted out, and you're going to have to ignore the beginning of this tweet because it's from Marty Mush. Middle school is bullshit. They said, hold your breath to make sure your diaphragm slows down so you don't have hiccups. But guess what? I still have hiccups. I don't remember that part of middle school, but it reminded me that someone a while, even earlier than that, had tweeted me that a Nicaraguan grandfather who practiced medicine in New York had the cure all along. And I have signal boosted his cure to the point where now every day someone tweets me, thank you, because of my good work here. What you do is you fill your lungs via the mouth. You have to use your mouth. Okay. You swallow twice in a row while holding your breath. Now it's a dry swallow, depending on how your mouth and glands work, but it's a drier, especially that second one, a little drier swallow. This is like, you know, that small hole they put on like the back of your router or some shit to reset it. Yeah. This is your body's reset button. So you do that swallow twice, and then you exhale very controlled and slowly through your nose. Boom, they're gone.
Okay. Thank you for your service, Coley. I've got a way that usually works like 90% of the time, but that to me, if you're talking about like the reset button that you have to use a ballpoint pen to hit, that the analogy that you made actually convinces me that your method is probably better. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they make the reset button so small that you have to find like a bobby pin or some shit, but that's a different topic for a different day.
Well, I think they do.
I think that's smart. Yeah, I think that's smart because
I don't disagree that it's not smart, but it's almost like they should have a tool built into it because I don't always have like a paper clip or something at the ready.
It's smart though because you don't want to keep on hitting the reset button on accident, you know.
Yeah. For sure. And also, they probably get some calls to the cable repairman to come over from some older ladies that are like, I can't find the reset button. They make it just hard enough that the layperson has to pay $50 to have somebody come over to their house, use like the special instrument for it, and then reset it that way. But yeah, let's get into a little bit of today's topic before we jump into the interview. It's biohacking. We're going to be talking about CRISPR, which is fascinating. I've done a little bit of research.
Real quick. Got to do this. RP to DMX, dog.
True.
Childhood hero. I was one of the kids, like when his album first came out, I was on it first. And when I seen other people had it, I was mad. I was that kid. I was like, you don't know nothing about DMX. I was that kid. But DMX is a legend. RP, had to get that out there.
Yep. Good point. And he was, it's like him and Vince Wilfork are the two guys that make wearing overalls with no undershirt look cool. Nobody else in the world can do that but those two guys.
Shout out to the homies.
Quick story. DMX is from Yonkers, and he performed the police fight the firefighters for charity, a boxing match in the gym where I trained out of. DMX performed at this like tiny charity event, and it was awesome. It was literally like so sick. So all weekend just bumping.
I would argue the greatest rap entertainer, like performer of all time. Like his shows are amazing. His energy is amazing. I think he's the only artist, rap artist. I can't speak to all artists, but I think he's the only rap artist to have 2 #1 albums in 1 year. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And he
No
came out
one, no one any genre has done that since.
Fact. So he was a great actor, like just an amazing. I mean, he had his demons for show, but he was a great one.
The one thing I had trouble with since his passing was like coming up with a comparison for him. The only people I can compare him to are like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Like when I think DMX, I think hard hits. I think like I feel like he had the anthems for so many highlight reels of defensive backs in the early 2000s.
Yep.
He had the best hype music, like locker room hype music. Like everyone got hyped to that.
It was him, and then Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. Those were the only 2 choices that you could make when you were putting together a YouTube highlight reel.
Those were the suburban schools, man.
Dude, I saw Arian's highlight reel. NFL Throwback tweeted out your highlight reel from like 2012, 2013 on Friday.
What was the music?
I think it was just the actual call of the game.
Okay, I hope it wasn't Bodies at the Floor. I was like, what's gonna be wrong with that?
It was not. It was Disturbed, Down with the Sickness. Even better. Matter of fact, I want to ask this guy, Josiah, when we get him on, I want to be like, hey, if you have a player that's on your fantasy team and he's got a hamstring injury, can you be like, I want to give that guy my hamstring through biohacking? And maybe that's a way might be able to get you off the IR one of these days, Arian.
I'm already off the IR.
So I think
back on that motherfucker neither.
I think we should start to just like differentiate CRISPR from biohacking. So biohacking is sort of just like, hacking your own body and making, decisions that aren't necessarily 100% medical science in order to enhance your brain, your body, or, like anything you're trying to do. So, for example, this has nothing to do with CRISPR, but like, taking supplements like to work out and to like gain lean muscle mass is technically biohacking.
Okay.
So, like, for example, like if you take amino acids or certain supplements to help, like, make you more vascular when you work out, that is all technically biohacking.
What about
technically
straight up drinking water? Is that biohacking? Is getting 8 hours of sleep a night? Is that like where is the line drawn between things that we do to improve our health and where biohacking comes in? Is it just like things that are a little bit abnormal or out of the ordinary? At that point, it's biohacking.
And that I was going to ask that, right? And so it really gets into a philosophical question, right? And this is why. I've had this conversation with people plenty of times before. They're like, "Oh, it's not natural." I'm like, "What does that even mean? What does natural even mean?" They're like, if it's not like I guess the technical definition, if it's not like if humans didn't manipulate it in some way, fashion. I'm like, okay, if that's the case, then are beaver dams natural? Yeah, they're natural. So why is the manipulation of sticks in their environment natural, but when we manipulate our environment, that's not natural? I don't understand that.
I don't know. Billy, don't turn to that angle. When you turn at that angle, your nose looks. You're doing the nose thing again. Avery, whatever you do, don't clip that. Don't clip that and zoom in on it. But yeah, I mean, that's actually a good question. Like beavers, all they know is how to build dams. Like like if you get down to humans' basic nature, all we really know how to do is eat, sleep, drink, and fuck. That's about it. So like anything that falls outside of those purviews, does that become biohacking? So I don't know, Billy. You're the one that's done the most research on this. Like, where would you say the line is drawn?
Basically, it's sort of like it's honestly the only definition is sort of the ethic of like DIY. Basically, like you're taking your health, your body into your own hands. It's like you're working on your car. Like you install things, you put modifications on your truck engine or whatnot. You jack up your truck, like those sort of self sort of reliance is sort of the basis of biohacking. So yeah,
CrossFit, they're biohackers.
That's more like exercise, you would say, but like it's more of taking. So basically, I like to take theanine with caffeine. So like if you mix L-theanine, which is an amino acid, with caffeine, it has a nootropic effect. And it enhances your cognitive function. There's evidence in, helps you focus and like, do work and like homework and stuff. And those sort of little things that people are doing have become this whole culture. And, steroid culture is biohacking. People trying to enhance their bodies is biohacking. But I find the stuff that people are doing for their brains is like so cool because, they're trying to fit. Like, I think we can all agree that, mental health has definitely come to the forefront of our culture recently because we use our brains so much more than previous generations. Just every day we use our brain more than our bodies nowadays, and our sedentary lifestyle. But with that, you're seeing leaps and bounds. Like microdosing mushrooms for depression, anxiety is biohacking. But it's just, since it's using yourself as the laboratory, is just fascinating to me. And this is where CRISPR comes in.
Hypothesis about where CRISPR is going to lead us. I'll let you. My stepfather's a PhD geneticist, right? And so we've had these conversations with him for years. Like that's what he did for years. That was his profession. He actually Tyson chickens. I said this in the pre-show, but Tyson Chicken, that company, he actually genetically engineered the first makeup of those chickens, that batch of chickens that they used. And so he got like a residual check every single month for decades. Like he's the man.
Quick question. Was that edited genes or was it selective breeding for the chicken?
Selective breeding.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I've definitely heard that turkeys, they can't naturally breed anymore because we bred them to a point where their breasts are too big, where they physically like can't mount another turkey. So every turkey that you eat is a product of a guy, and you can hear a great explanation from this from Mike Rowe when he came on Pardon My Take and talked about jacking off a turkey and how that's a job, and the turkey basically skeets into its own butt, and then that's how you get an egg. It's disgusting. But it's really interesting to hear. So you're telling me, Arian, that your stepdad has chickens in syndication where he just like sits at home and every day he gets royalties off birds?
Yeah, man, it's wild. He's like, this is the fascinating shit, right? And why I'm like so interested in everything, right? It's because one day I was having a conversation with him, and I was like, yo, because he like understands the genome, like DNA and sequencing. He understands that shit on a level I'll never understand it, right? That's what he did for a living. And so to me, in my eyes, it's like you kind of get a peek behind the window of life. Like you kind of understand how life works on a different level than the average human being. And so I asked him one day, I was like, what is it like kind of like seeing behind the curtains? And he said the most fascinating shit ever to me. He said, you know what, man? He said, all I know is I know a whole lot about a very little. And I was like, that is fucking profound, dog. And like that kind of was the catalyst into why I'm so interested in all the different sciences and everything, because it's like if you just sit and watch Netflix all day and just fucking waste away. There's brilliant people doing brilliant shit all day, every day, and like you have access to it. So like go fucking look for it.
Yeah, I like that. If you find a lane and you dominate that lane, it's kind of a recipe for success. Like Billy and Frogs, Arian and football and being inquisitive, Coley and hiccups, like get your brand straight. That's the best idea that you can be given. Yeah.
Brand up, dog. Brand up.
We're going to get deep into frogs later.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
No, trust me. No, seriously, because this guy breeds frogs too.
You mean after the podcast is over?
No, this is okay. No, this is how I got blocked. Josiah does experiments on frogs, and it's fascinating. But now let's get down to what CRISPR is.
All right, okay, but before we get into that, so I just want to say, like, I'm typically okay, generally speaking, with the idea if somebody wants to perform like an experiment on themselves, they're aware of the risks and they've done some studying. I don't have a problem with that. But when we start to get into CRISPR stuff and what we'll talk about later, there are implications where you're modifying things that could get passed on to future generations. And that opens up a whole new can of worms that we can't even begin to figure out the ramifications of. So I'm sure we'll talk to Josiah about this when he gets on a little bit. But the difference I see between like biohacking is one thing where you can figure out different ways to kind of take shortcuts. That's why they call it hacking, right? And then CRISPR is actually talking about fucking with the building blocks of life and the building blocks of your own body and your reproductive genes to a certain extent. And that's where, I mean, there are awesome implications for it, but then you get into the Jurassic Park side of things too. But yeah, so it's a sub level, I think, of biohacking, because there are things that you can do with CRISPR that people have already done where it changes your makeup from day to day, not necessarily passing it along. And to a certain extent, I think that that's okay if you have a good understanding of what you're doing. The problem is if you're getting all of your information from the bodybuilding.com forums. I know it's a great place to go, maybe the single most important collection of literature on earth. But if you don't have a full picture of what you're getting into, it can be pretty dangerous. So this is my disclaimer saying, don't do it just because Billy tells you to do it. Having Billy in your life is already enough of a biohack, where just his presence influences you to do dangerous stuff. So just make sure that you don't take everything that Billy says 100% certain. Just look at it like a fascinating conversation. But Billy, go off.
Don't do SARMs, kids. They're really bad for your brain. Bodybuilding forum reference. So CRISPR. Yeah. CRISPR is clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. That is the acronym. So how it works, and this is actually sort of very relevant nowadays, but to kind of describe how it works, you got to describe how viruses work, because what people don't realize is that when a virus gets into your body, it hijacks your cells by injecting its RNA into the nucleus of the cell and causes the cell to start producing more viruses. So like, for example, a herpes, right? A herpes is just a bunch of exploded cells.
Just one herpes.
Viral load, yeah. Mm-hmm. Like that's what it is. So how these viruses do it is they hijack the DNA of cells. So what scientists have realized is that if viruses can go inside cells and hijack DNA, what if they used the viruses, hijacking skills to put in not their DNA to make more viruses, but to change the DNA within the cells to maybe produce more of these cells that are similar, or change.
To that point, so that's how vaccines work, right? Vaccines is it'll get a copy of what that virus is, and it like boosts it alerts your immune system to recognize what that virus is. That way it becomes immune to it.
Right now we got to tread carefully with that sort of stuff, because some vaccines are just dead virus, like whereas COVID. the new mRNA vaccines that are coming out, we got to tread very lightly here, because I don't want you're just explaining how viruses work and how we have used that information to combat it. I mean, we're not gonna. Yeah.
So I think the idea behind the CRISPR research is that what you're doing is you're using the virus's playbook. You're learning from a virus, and you're saying, okay, if a virus can make your cells produce viruses, then we can inject something else in there that will make your cells take on our plan, and your cells will start to replicate whatever it is we put into them. Right, Billy?
Exactly. And I really want to
kind of real quick. So this was a point that my stepdad was telling me about. So it's like, so what it does is they'll take Cas9, which is a protein, right? They'll take Cas9 protein, and then they'll take a guiding RNA, right? And so they'll combine those two, and then for whatever reason, Cas9 protein can seek out whatever it is that you want it to, and it cuts the DNA, right? And the guiding RNA is what you use to replace that sequence with. And so it's fascinating as fuck how we can literally pinpoint what we want to change and how we want to change it, and that is like the vehicle to do so, which is the Cas9 protein and the guiding RNA.
Reading about all the experiments that have been done, and how some of this is going to be able to cure cancer, because it's so fascinating. But one thing I wanted to look at and to sort of explain how it works, myostatin is a compound that your body releases to prevent your body from creating too much muscle. It's like an off switch for your muscle growth.
You might have that. I don't.
But there's dogs and cows, breeds that have been selectively bred to have less myostatin. At the time, they didn't know that's why they were more muscular, but they just chose the most jacked animals and bred them with other jacked animals and created like Belgian blue cattle or bully whippets, which if you've seen those pictures of that like super jacked dog, that's a dog with no myostatin, and even occurs in humans. There's this one German baby that was born that's like absolutely jacked, and everyone's like, what the hell is going on?
That's an important point, but it's like, I don't think people really think about this shit, is how fascinating it is, dog. Like, because I'm curious to see what Big T thinks about this, because like the dude that was ahead of the Human Genome Project, which was like a decade plus long trek to try to figure out our entire genomes, right? And we still don't know everything, but we have a pretty good idea. So he is Christian, right? And so a big debate amongst like fundamentalist Christians is a lot of people don't think evolution happened. And he said, he's the head of the Genome Project, and he was like, if there was no fossil evidence, if there was no other evidence of any kind of evolution ever, all the evidence that you need is in our DNA. It's right there. Everything that we are is DNA. Everything that we can be is DNA. That's why that's why they say like you're really closely related to a banana. You're really closely related to chimps. You're really closely related to everything that is living because we all share the same building blocks of life, which is DNA.
So Billy, can you walk us through real quick, like how this CRISPR project, is it called a CRISPR project? Is that what it was called at the beginning? Like we called it the Human Genome Project? Because I feel like for years and years, all scientists were talking about was figuring out the damn genome, like figuring out exactly how that fit together. And then there was one scientist, or actually like a couple scientists that got together and they were focusing on RNA instead. And they're like, we think that this might be the key. And then it's just the last couple of years where I guess a lot of the focus has shifted over to the RNA stuff.
Because so basically the Genome Project is a separate project in its own right, where they were just basically trying to figure out the total code for human DNA and basically just map out the genome and sort of like, all of our DNA is, cytosine, guanine, adenosine. I think I might be butchering this, but it's 4 basic compounds.
CTGA.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, the human genome is just a combination of thousands of, those all in different orders. And that's what genes are. So it's literally like, people talk about, I don't want to talk about the simulation theory, but it's literally like code, like in our bodies. And basically what CRISPR does is it chops up that code and turns off certain genes or turns off on genes that you want by using this, sort of viral editing, basically. And so what we've gotten is, we're doing research with these. I need to ask Josiah about this. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But I think the new vaccines, the new mRNA vaccines, are actually a product of CRISPR. And but I'm not totally, don't quote me on that. But the testing, there is a huge amount of ethical dilemmas when dealing with this, because we want to use this as a medicine to help people. But to do that, we have to test CRISPR on people at some point before it becomes, a good treatment. So, basically you have basic experiments where they take stuff like mice and they inject them with these myostatin inhibitors. So you just have a bunch of jacked mice who have 2 times the muscle mass as a regular mouse. And, they've started to do it to AIDS patients who are terminally, they have AIDS. So they inject them with CRISPR technology for them to some people are immune to HIV and AIDS. They like have a protein that allows them to, fight the virus better than other people. And basically to try to turn that gene on in people who are terminally ill, they were testing on them, and they've seen a lot of results, and the viral load in the people went down.
I like how Billy's basic tenets for like the usefulness and what a giant impact the CRISPR studies and mRNA research is going to have on the world moving forward is like it's going to save billions of lives, and it's going to make animals strong as fuck. You're going to see the most swole mice, like some you're going to see like big ass lions that are capable. Is that a concern of yours, Billy, that at some point the animals are going to become too strong? Because I've seen your mind goes immediately to Jurassic Park, right? When you start talking about all this stuff.
Exactly.
And that is one of the ethical concerns is like you could, when you get this deep into it and you start analyzing the code for stuff, you could figure out something that actually does turn a frog into a T-Rex.
Well, the myostatin, basically when you do turn, like the body does stuff for certain reasons. And when you start messing around with different genes, you see the reactionary feedback. So for example, all the animals that have myostatin inhibitors naturally or CRISPR applied all ended up with heart problems because basically there was too much muscles for their heart to support. And they had respiratory problems because they're so heavy. Like myostatin definitely has a role, and that's why you shouldn't really, for example, if you have all that unnatural muscle mass, it becomes non-functional, and you end up, taking a dive in 10 seconds because you just can't handle all the muscle you put on.
Right. You can't survive somebody that gets into war mode against you.
So CRISPR has been shown to be able to do what it was created to do: change genes, turn on genes, turn off genes, and help try to treat serious, diseases that we haven't found cures for yet. But what has happened is, you have this ethical dilemma. So recently in 2018, there was the He Jiankui affair, which is a doctor in China who used CRISPR technology on 2 twins in the womb in order to so the mother and father were both HIV positive, and they wanted to conceive. So the doctor rounded up several different parents who were both HIV positive, and they're like, we can't have a baby because our baby will have HIV. And he was like, okay, we're going to do a test so you can conceive a child that is resistant to HIV. Both the twins were born in October of 2018, and with this treatment, both tested negative for HIV. So the Chinese government actually arrested him because they basically called him, Frankenstein. Like, you can't just do these secret tests on people. He only came out about the testing and the experiment after the children were born and healthy, but he just went through with this without getting it past any sort of governing body.
Right. Not to get all Karen on you though. Devil's advocate, the other side. Like, I see a value in putting restrictions. Like, there's a reason why he wasn't allowed to do that. Yeah. And he did it. And when it comes to HIV, especially,
100%.
There are ways that you can make sure that your babies don't have HIV, even if you are HIV positive. So what he was doing was he was doing a different way for the sake of experimentation on a set of twins to see if this technology could work. And it looks like it worked, but we don't know what's going to happen like down the line, because he did mess with these kids, and they had, as far as ethical concerns, the fetus didn't really have a say one way or another. And so I can understand why there are punishments if a doctor does do something like that, because it's dangerous and it's fucked up if like the kids end up with some sort of disease down the line and they're like, hey, I'm a product of what my parents chose to do before I was even born. I understand that. I also think that there's like future implications about, I'll put it this way. Sometimes things that suck in the moment for an individual end up being a benefit to the human race in the long run. So an example of that is sickle cell. So sickle cell is it's I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's a disorder where it makes it difficult for certain things to bind on to other things inside your system. It affects a high proportion of African Americans because it was actually a genetic asset in sub-Saharan Africa. So, thousands and thousands, 100,000 years, however long ago it was, it made it more resistant for malaria to bind onto your cells if you had the sickle cell trait. And so it ended up being passed along because it was an evolutionary advantage. Now, right now, it's not really an evolutionary advantage. In fact, like a lot of people have to struggle with it and they deal with it, and it's really shitty for a lot of people. But that's an example, like it could go the other way as well. There might be something that's not desirable as we would think, what is desirable, what's not today, that will be passed along and through evolution 10,000, 20,000 years from now, that will actually be an asset to the human race to have that in their system. So when we're kind of playing God and messing around with things that can be passed on to the next generation, generations after that, that to me is where it becomes, I don't know like where the line is drawn, but it, for lack of a better term, it's fucking spooky to do that. Like it blows your mind. It makes you feel like you're doing something that you shouldn't necessarily be doing to the human race.
So
let me play devil's advocate. Okay, go ahead.
Just to correct you real quick. So if you have if both your parents have the sickle cell gene and you have a double recessive sickle cell, then you have sickle cell and it's bad. But if you only have one of the genes, then you're resistant to malaria. So if it was like heterozygous versus homozygous, it's not if you have sickle cell, you're immune to malaria.
Right, the trait. I'm saying like the trait can be an asset, and you're right. It's been years since I read up on that, but it's kind of the same principle.
Yeah, I think his point was just that it was an evolutionary combatant to a earthly, I don't know, is it a disease? I don't even call it. Is it a disease? Is sickle cell a disease?
It's a genetic.
It's a trait that you have. Yeah,
it's where like most cells are like oval or circle, and sickle cells like they're the when you have sickle cell, those cells are moon shaped, and it gets hard for those cells to pass oxygen to different parts of the body. But I'm gonna play devil's advocate to you, PFT, real quick.
Hit me,
because I do see the disadvantages to quote unquote playing God, right? But there's also ethical concerns that come up by not playing God. Point in case, say our scientists say 100% we can eliminate cancer in your baby, the possibility of cancer in your baby with CRISPR. We have found out a way. We found the gene. Your baby will not get cancer. Do you then say no to that?
Oh, I 100% say yes. Like me talking to you man to man, if I'm thinking of like, do I want my baby to not have the risk of ever having cancer, I say yes. But then if you like put me in a chair in a dark room with like a couple black lights for a few days and just make me think by myself and get real philosophical with it, then I start to get to the point where I'm like, you know what? We're playing God. It's domino effect. One thing leads to another. But you're absolutely right. Like 1,000,000%. As a person, I'm like, yes, 100%.
So this is where again, because like the shit with CRISPR is the thing with it is, you can do things like change your baby's eye color. You can do things like, make them a little stronger, make them a little more intelligent, whatever the case may be, whatever that means, right? What I see, this is going to be at the forefront of human debate in the next 100 years. This is going to be the most talked about and the most debated thing ever. Because in my opinion, this is how and this is a little out there, but this is how we become an intergalactic species. Like you can there's no debate that technology is the future of our culture. Okay. And I don't see any kind of parting with human beings somehow, some way in the future being connected with that. There's just no way. And so if you then can get rid of disease, you then can get rid of, you then can be selective about what traits humans can or cannot have, what you're going to have is a bunch of superhumans, super smart, super intelligent, super emotionally intelligent, right? And then you have technology. We figure out a way to integrate with technology. There's just no way around it, in my opinion, that this is going to happen. I don't see any way around, like us not having the internet in our heads already. That's old. Like, we're going to integrate with technology. We are going to. Our evolution is that. That's how I see it.
It sounds
and
like
I don't think it's wrong, honestly.
it sounds like you're saying that sports are going to kick ass in like 200 years.
I think they're going to be trash, actually.
Everyone's going to be everyone's going to be too good.
Everybody's super nice. That shit going to be horrible, bro.
I was thinking about this a lot, and there's the idea that the wealthy are going to get access to this technology first, and then not
Really
only
leftists.
Yeah, well, not only are they going to be, there's going to be financial inequality, but there's going to be, able, that like all the rich people will be superhumans. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, I was reading up about a bunch of stuff, but I don't think there's one single gene that makes you smart and makes you intelligent. And I was like, because it's a combination of a bunch of different genes. And I feel like, one person being smart and another person being smart, it's not because they have the same gene. It's because of learned a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that's a philosophical question though, because we still don't 100% know what intelligence is. That's why I said, like, what does that even mean? Because a lot of people associate it with IQ, right? Well, IQ is a certain set of tests that is directed towards a certain outcome, right? It doesn't necessarily denote intelligence on the full spectrum of intelligence, right? And so the very fact that we gauge intelligence by that test is asinine, but it's a good indicator of awareness of patterns, awareness of things like that, right? Which is a subset of intelligence, right? But to encompass an entirety of what intelligence is, we don't know what that means yet. But we don't know all of what's in our DNA either, right? A lot of that is a mystery. We don't understand it. So my thing is, I don't think that it is immoral to go ahead with experimenting with this. I just don't think it is. I think this is the natural human progression of trying to figure out how to better ourselves in every single way. And this is it's just like medicine, in my opinion. Medicine in the early 1700s was wild, right? Like crazy shit. But they were doing what they knew best to do in order to keep people healthy. And to me, this is just the modern version of that. Like we're on the precipice of like something that I feel will change humanity forever.
Going back to the intelligence thing, though, the more we become interconnected, having everybody be the exact same level of intelligence or have like this huge increase, that might actually go against what you were saying earlier, Aaron, which is like find your lane and know the most about it. Like if you give somebody, if you increase their brain capacity like 50% as opposed to the 9 or 10% or whatever they're using right now, and have them live in like Antarctica, they're going to know everything about ice, right? They're going to be the fucking ice captains of the world. They're going to be the most like intelligent people when it comes to that one thing. But if everyone's connected and you've manipulated the genes a little bit, then everyone is just going to be kind of flailing, kind of maybe in the same lane. Maybe the world's going to be not enough for them,
Well, I know. See, and I always say it's like philosophy, right? Because that's what it is at this point. But is that not the goal, right? That should be the goal of humanity, is to make society be as comfortable and as happy as possible. And to me, that's all we all try to do, right? Every single invention is just for comfort, right? How can I make you more comfortable? How can I make you more a little more happy than you already are? That's all we all try to do. To me, this is just on a grander scale. I just don't see anything wrong with it. I look at it like, like the Matrix. At the end of the day, it's like you sit down, nigga be like, yo, I want to know Kung Fu. To plug you up, now you know Kung Fu. Like, why should information be so hard to get? I think in our society now, we associate growth with pain. but it doesn't have to be. If I went through all the pain in my life, right, I'm not going to want my child to go through the same pain I went through, right? If I can ease or aid that in any way, I'm going to pass him down the gems that I've learned so that he doesn't have to walk the walk that I walked.
But what about art? Because a lot of great art comes from pain, comes from struggle. Like if everybody is, optimized to the point where they don't experience as much, like back to your case in point, DMX, he was a great artist. A lot of that probably came from a place of real pain that he had early on in his life and what he went through. And you can tell the difference between somebody that's being authentic with whatever art they're putting forward and somebody that's not. This is drifting probably like a little far afield of talking about like RNA and shit. But,
right, but let me just answer that question because that's a great point you bring up. Like, what about art? In my opinion, art is like a spectrum of emotions, right? It's just an expression of a spectrum of emotions. So if the goal is to eliminate all the bad shit, I wouldn't even necessarily say that's the goal. I think human interaction will still have negative aspects to it, but all of the encompassing environmental factors, we should try to do everything that we can to aid that. Art, I don't think will ever die because humans still have emotions and we're going to express those as much as we can.
At some point, we'll just have like a farm, just like a giant town of people. What's the most artistic place in the world, would you say?
Vermont.
Vermont? We'll have one colony in Vermont. We'll have one in Louisiana. I feel like most of American culture radiates out from Louisiana, and then one in like Los Angeles, and then we'll just treat all the people in those towns like absolute shit. So the greatest art is going to come from all their pain, but it's for the greater good,
But there
we low key did that already, my G.
Naturally, well,
Not Vermont, but yeah, the other two.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying.
Vermont's so happy they make the best ice cream. That's what Vermont does.
I don't know why I said Vermont. There was like the farm comment. I was like, that sounds like Vermont.
I fucking hate it when Arian catches me in some deep shit like that. And I'm like, God damn. Yeah.
But I think to your point, you know what we're gonna have, and what you're describing is the fucking Star Trek Enterprise, dog. Just a colony of star traveling people, and they just want to explore and enjoy. That's it.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get happier with more intelligence. Like I think if anything, the art's gonna be better.
That's a great fucking
point. Yeah, this is what I was thinking about when we were talking about, I didn't say it before, but like intelligence, super smart people, like some people like think all the time and like have a constant inner monologue, and some people don't have that voice at all.
So that's what they say.
Great.
That's where it comes from. That term comes from. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like literally like, some people don't understand when people say like, there's like a voice that's my own voice that talks in my head, and they're like, there's no voice in my head. I just like, they don't conceptualize with words, just feelings. And it's not, and they usually have better mental health.
Yeah, no, it's actually a great point. Like if you can stop thinking so much, some of the happiest moments in my life come when I'm not thinking at all. Like being dumb kicks ass. Like when I find myself in moments where I'm dumb as shit, that is when I'm very, very happy. Coley brings up a great point. It's like the world is just going to be filled with super depressed, like 350-pound jack dudes walking around just crying all the time.
I agree.
But like, for example,
if
you found the gene that found that, like, that knew there's that inner monologue, that wouldn't necessarily make anyone, smarter or achieve greater things. It might actually be a detriment. Whereas a lot of like super successful people aren't actually that smart, and they know that, and they ended up just outworking other people to get to where they were.
I'll point to two prime examples. Two presidents' sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Hunter Biden. Both those guys, I guarantee you there's no inner monologue whatsoever, but they're happy as fuck. Those guys, they don't think about shit. They're just rolling around being like, hey, what's the next thing? Let's get these endorphins.
Well, they're fucking biohacking. That's why they're taking all sorts of supplements.
No question.
All right, we got Josiah here. Let's bring him in.
Before we get to the interview of Josiah Zainer, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Canada Dips. From deep in the hills of Humboldt County, the Coastal Cowboy Dip Boys at Canada Dips have an exciting announcement for the Kings of the Unknown, the Macrodose Militia. Canada Dips CBD, the nation's leading tobacco and nicotine-free dip alternative, has come up with an exciting offer for the listeners of the show. Nothing is better than a crisp lid, and Candidips is offering one of their embroidered lids a $25 value for free for dipping into life and trying the California roll on the website. Head to candidipscbd.com and add a California roll, which is 5 cans, one of each of their core flavors, and also adding your hat of choice into the shopping cart. At checkout, put the promo code Macrodose and enjoy the hat on the house. Candidip CBD, the original nicotine and tobacco-free dip alternative with CBD from the land of marijuana, Humboldt County, California. Wants you styling for your 420 festivities. So take advantage of the limited hat run on the website and secure a Humboldt keepsake to make sure everyone knows you're firing up the herb or dipping into some CBD or THC products. Act now. Head to candidipcbd.com and add California Roll, which is their starter kit with mango, wintergreen, mint, citrus, and cinnamon, and then add your favorite hat to the shopping cart. At checkout, put promo code Macrodose and enjoy the hat on the house. If you feel like following the nation's leading CBD and THC brand that has revolutionized the delivery system of cannabinoids, head to their Instagram at Candidips, the account with the blue verified checkmark, not one of the imposters, and join the Lip Boomer train. This isn't another fad CBD product. Candidips utilizes a patented water-soluble, how you say that?
Soluble, nailed it.
I said okay, but Candidips utilizes a patented water-soluble delivery system that absorbs in the mouth and provides you some healthy, delicious chawdness while you can save your mouth from the alternative. Don't forget candidipscbd.com. Add a California roll to your cart, pick out a hat of your choice in the swag, and slam promo code Macrodose and don the Humboldt embroidered Candidippers for 420.
All right, we welcome on a very special guest. It's Dr. Josiah Zayner.
Like that.
Actually, a guest that was recommended to me by Billy. Billy Football is on this call right now too, Josiah. He's a big fan. He described you to me as the LeBron James of biohacking. And so I was like, I don't know what that means, but
I prefer Michael Jordan, but I'll take it.
Let's get that debate going again. It's been a while since we had that one.
Spicy.
MJ or LeBron. Okay, so I want to get into a lot of stuff with you today. Right off the bat, though, I do have to bring up kind of the elephant in the room, and this is a recurring theme with Billy and many people on this podcast, actually. You blocked Billy on Twitter, and he's, again, like your biggest fan. He is a Josiah stan. And
really, I don't even know.
So
blocked him on Twitter?
What he
it was
did
very well deserved.
Yeah, Billy asked you if there was a way to genetically engineer a giant frog, because he's obsessed with frogs and he just wants to make them bigger.
He sent me like 50 messages and I was like, bro, chill out. What is going Like, it wasn't one message. Like every day, my messages in Twitter and everything I posted, I leave a comment like, bro, I want a genetically modified giant bullfrog.
Yeah, that's him.
What is up with this guy?
So I was
he's
looking
harmless.
into your work on African clawed frogs and I think green tree frogs.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've kept African clawed frogs, and I've also kept African bullfrogs, pixie frogs. And I was thinking, like, if you can, make an African clawed frog or one of these green tree frogs, have, what was it, 1.6 times the mass of the non-test of the control group. But like, can we not do that to like the tiny tree frog? Can we do that to like the 5-pound African bullfrog?
Probably. It's totally possible. I think the thing is that we just didn't test it on that species.
Right.
So it's impossible for me to know just like 100% out of the box. It just take experimentation, somebody willing to go through and do the experiments and make it happen. But
All right. If Billy impresses you enough over the course of this interview, maybe you'll consider unblocking him if he promises not to inundate you with just bullfrog requests, like custom bullfrog.
We're gonna hashtag unblock Billy.
Yeah. I'll put it this way: Billy looks at you.
it's so funny
like,
that you're the bullfrog guy. I remember it,
I know. I was just like, it would have been, I realized at the time that I was I was just trying to get your attention, but I realized that was probably
Admit it, you were drunk. You were just, whenever you got drunk, you'd be like, I'm just going to drunk tweet this guy.
You probably told all his friends about you. Like, they're just fucking weirdo that keep talking to me about frogs, man.
I think some other people hopped on the bag wagon and started harassing you, and it wasn't just me.
I like how Billy looks at you like you're the exhibit of frogs, like pimp my frog. Like I want a customized African claw frog. You're the guy.
Well, your website and your e-store, right? Odin's Lab. You sell a couple of products for.
My company, the Odin. So we had a kit where you could genetically modify frogs. It was actually a thing. Then we realized like mass producing frogs and shipping them to people and everything like that was and the thing is the frogs live for like 10 or 20 years. So after people genetically modified them, they just had to keep them as a pet for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So
pretty hefty.
If I could make a request, maybe run it back one
Billy.
more time.
Billy, stop. We just got past this.
I just unblocked you, man.
I'm just saying. You got to blocked again.
You're too thirsty right now, Billy. Let's take it back to the beginning real quick because a lot of people might not be familiar with your work. I wasn't very familiar with your work until Billy pointed me at you. But can you just give us like a little bit of background as to what you do and kind of how you got there?
Yeah, no. So I'm a PhD scientist. Spent a couple years at NASA doing genetic engineering, working specifically with CRISPR, trying to engineer organisms to help astronauts survive in space and actually terraform Mars. But NASA's actually, there's so much bureaucracy and everything like that. Like nothing ever got done, and I thought there has to be a better way. So I decided to just go off and do experiments on my own. Start my own company so I could do genetic engineering in my home and help other people do genetic engineering in their homes. And so the past 5 or 6 years, I've just gone on a mad exploration of genetic engineering, both myself and animals and all types of organisms, and trying to provide other people with the tools to be able to do this. Because I think genetic engineering is probably one of the most powerful technologies we know of. You can literally engineer like living things that grow, and that just blows my mind.
Is there a small part of you hearing yourself describe like what you do and how you got there where you're like, I might be a mad scientist, I might be like the origin of a supervillain story?
There have been times where I actually have a bad dream that maybe I'm the one who is responsible for the apocalypse or something like that.
Have you ever heard of Yakub?
Yakub, no. What is that?
Yakub is folklore. Yakub is in a lot of these extremist groups. They believe that Yakub was a mad scientist that genetically engineered white people.
Yeah. What does that even mean?
Is that
to like make them better or something?
No, he invented them.
He invented white people. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Where did they come from? Because weren't Africans like originally humans had dark skin?
Yeah, that's the folklore.
No, white people are Neanderthals. That's what's the real. That's the real truth.
No, but it's crazy, right? Because it is such a. You look, obviously, we all have survived the biggest modern pandemic, and we've seen the power that biological things can have on the world. Obviously, there's also a super big positive to that, right? With things like the vaccine to combat that. You're talking about drugs that involve genetic engineering, so gene therapies and stuff. So there's also a lot of good things, but, it does scare me because there's so much unknown and it is so powerful.
Right. And Billy was bringing up something earlier before you jumped on, and it's a good point that if we're going to advance science, at some point there does need to be, human experiments that are done. It's just, medicine has proven that you can experiment on animals, you can do things theoretically, but at some point there will need to be human experimentation. So what you're doing is you're actually just saying, like, let's see what we can do that isn't controlled in a laboratory. Let's see what we can do on our own. And so how do you weigh what projects you want to work on when weighing that against like what the risk is going to be.
Yeah, we also have to think about like, you know, it's not unethical to experiment on other people, but you know, how many of these big pharma execs took the vaccine before the clinical trial, you know, or were part of the clinical trial? I imagine none of them were. They waited till everybody else figured out it was okay, and then they took it themselves, right? So part of it is just like, I want to test something on myself first. I don't want to ever like ask somebody else to put themselves in harm's way. Every experiment I do on myself, you know, what people don't see is the amount of research I do beforehand and trying to figure out all the risks and everything that can happen. And sometimes it is unknown still. You know, there was that time I poop. I don't know if you guys heard about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't hear about this. You can enlighten me, brother.
So, there's actually a New York Times documentary on it called Gut Hack. If you want to check it out, it's really amazing. A short documentary, and it was about our bodies are filled with bacteria, and they actually contribute a lot to our health, especially our gut health. And I wanted to try to replace those bacteria in and on my body to try to help heal gut issues I was having. So I found a healthy donor and literally ingested feces and measured like all the bacteria in my body over a long period of time. And a lot of people said I was going to die. It was really crazy. And it scared. The crazy thing is like when everybody else says you're crazy and you're the only one who thinks you're sane, it's hard to think you're sane. You know, you're like, maybe I am actually crazy.
Yeah. Well,
but the experiment worked.
So yeah, I was going to ask, how are you shitting these days?
Great. You know, it's actually amazing. Since I did the experiment, like I used to have blood in my stool and never since. And like, I also collected all the data. So I sequenced all the bacteria and stuff in my gut and everything. And it really did change. The transplant changed all the bacteria and everything like that. But I tried to do research. I tried to consult with experts I know in the field, you know, microbiome research. There are always going to be risks, but it's kind of like that thing, you know, if you want to push stuff forward, you got to be willing to do stuff nobody else is willing to do.
I have a question, brother. It's on your gut thing because I earlier last year I was suffering from like really bad bouts of like anxiety. And I went like I thought I was having heart problems because like anxiety can like feel like it's a heart attack, right? And he suggested to me that there's something going on in my stomach that like kind of like sends a signal to my brain. And then I kind of started doing a little bit of research about that and how like they call your gut like your second brain and how it's like directly correlated and even like can dictate certain things. I mean, can you shed a little light on how the gut is connected and what it functions is on a higher level other than just ingesting food?
Yeah, you have to think about like all the food you eat, the bacteria also eat in your body, eat some of that, right? So you're feeding them with like whatever you eat. So they're going to respond to the food you put in your body and release signals that say like, I need more sugar. You're not eating enough sugar, and they're going to signal to your brain, right? So on even the most minimal level, they will respond to anything you put in your body. So if you're not putting stuff in your body, if you're really nervous or stressed out or anxious, you know, acid buildup and stuff like that, I'm sure that has an impact, right? So basically, like anything that affects your metabolism is probably going to affect them. And they can also signal to your brain to tell it certain things. And yeah, I'm sure it can trigger a lot of different things, right? And now the scientific research isn't completely solid on that stuff yet, but we definitely know that those bacteria can signal to your brain. So yeah.
So you're kind of like conditioning the bacteria in your stomach, and they in a sense kind of dictate what you crave.
Yeah, so it's like an ecosystem. So you imagine like a forest, right? That's in your stomach. All these different plants and animals and trees, all these different bacteria, right? If you go into the forest and, you know, you burn down half of it, it's totally going to change the ecosystem. What other animals and stuff can live in there and grow and survive in there. So if your diet is just, like, I don't know, Red Bull and, fast food, like, those are the bacteria that are going to grow in there, the ones that want that food, right? And there's been studies and research that shows that, like, things like fruits and vegetables, things that have cellulose and stuff like that, they actually contribute to more, like, healthy bacteria inside you. So you can, like, literally, like you said, condition your gut to have a certain ecosystem to where it's just like, where's my fast food? Because all I got is fast food bacteria in there,
Billy, you got some questions? I know Billy's like, he's chomping at the bit to talk to you.
So I could, I have tons of questions. First question is...
No frog stuff, bro. No frog.
First question is, you very famously publicly injected yourself with a myostatin inhibiting the could you just describe the
CRISPR. Oh man, so it needs a little context. So this was, I think, in 2017. 2017 CRISPR was getting really popular. Now CRISPR is a modern genetic engineering technique that makes it simpler and less expensive for anybody to edit the genome of almost any organism, right? And everybody was talking about it, and everybody was like, yeah, this is going to cure all these people of these diseases and everything like that. But we're not going to put it in the clinic for another, I think it just started to get to the clinic. I don't even know if it's actually been tested by itself in humans yet for safety. Maybe it has this year or something like that, but it's been 4 years since they started really hyping it, but even more years before that. It was first discovered maybe around 2012. So you're talking almost 10 years, right? From this thing that they say can cure all these diseases. And I was like, what's taking everybody so long? Like, why are people sitting on this thing if they say it's a cure for a disease? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be like, here, I'm going to make a CRISPR drug and I'm going to inject myself with it. And I'm going to show that, like, it's possible. So, like, what are we waiting for? What is all the holdup? And I think that's really big with medicine, is that, like, you look at the coronavirus vaccine, the vaccine besides that, I think besides swine flu, the earliest vaccine before that took like 4 years. But it's like, so you're telling me we can do it in like a few months?
Quick question on that. Are some of the new mRNA vaccines that the pharmaceutical companies are bringing up, were they made using CRISPR?
No, they're not made using CRISPR, but they just synthesize the RNA, and it's a genetic technically it's a genetic modification, actually. It's the way gene therapy works. So basically what you're doing is you're putting a copy of the gene you want to function inside cells, and the cells make that gene, and then your body responds. And in this case, the gene is a part of the virus, so your immune system responds. But in normal gene therapies, it's usually a defective, so you have a defective gene, they'll put in a good copy of the gene, and then your body will make that good copy. But it's really similar. It is actually a genetic modification, which is really interesting.
So right now, where does a lot of your interest lie? Is it in things like current physical ailments, like you were talking about with the fecal transplant, or is it in like mental health, or is it like disease prevention, or I'm sure that there are like drug applications, like recreational drug applications for this too. Like,
no, I mean, like,
where
honestly,
are you finding most of your attention nowadays?
I wish I could spend time helping people and curing diseases, but it's like illegal and not really. There's so many legal issues around it. Generally, the projects I choose to work on are stuff that interests me and stuff that I just think is cool, and stuff that I think is safe. There's been projects I've been working on for a while that just take time. We did a coronavirus vaccine, actually. I don't know if you guys heard about that. It was in the news a little bit, but it kind of got killed by, it's one of the reasons I got kicked off of YouTube. What we did was we followed this scientific paper. They made a coronavirus vaccine for monkeys, and it worked. So we just copied the vaccine that they made, and me and a couple other biohackers, and we injected ourselves with it and ran all the same tests and everything. And it seemed to work. We developed antibodies and everything. But that basically got me kicked off the internet.
Oh, so yeah, I was gonna
Why
ask.
though? Why did it get you kicked off the internet? In your summation.
I think because, they're very skeptical of vaccine misinformation and a lot of vaccine stuff going around. YouTube, basically, they didn't even give us warning. They didn't even give me a warning. They just straight up deleted my account. We documented everything. The crazy thing was we live streamed and documented every single part of the process. So like how we created it. We made the DNA sequences available. We open sourced everything. We showed all the experiments we did. We documented it, us drawing our blood, us then taking our blood and testing it for antibody. We did all live, everything live. So nobody could say we were faking anything. And YouTube just didn't like it, I guess. And they said,
I'm going to be honest. I think they may have taken it off because your work was so good. They didn't want other countries developing vaccines.
maybe, yeah.
Because think about it. I mean, I've been looking into this, but having vaccines and having a developed vaccine is a huge, global, political thing. Who are you getting your vaccines from? So if there's just information how to make your own vaccine, it takes away power from a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of these pharmaceutical companies aren't licensing their vaccines or giving them away for free, the patents to other countries, which is crazy. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and they're charging other countries to use just the patent for the vaccine.
It also might have just been you had unlicensed music in the background. You had Metallica playing as a soundtrack. Lars Ulrich.
That's probably it. I imagine that was the problem.
Lars heard the intro to Nothing Else Matters, and he was like, wait a second, let's get this motherfucker offline. But I think that what you're describing, and you brought it up earlier, is there's things move slowly in bureaucracies. And to a certain extent, it can be frustrating, especially if you're doing the work and you're on that leading edge of technology and you see what can be done with fewer restrictions. But also those guidelines and those rails are there for a purpose, right? So there's got to be some sort of happy medium where you can meet and say, okay, certain restrictions need to be eased for this exact reason. And that way you kind of keep those, because I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I don't think that people should be injecting the monkey vaccines into themselves. As a general rule of thumb. That might make me controversial. I might.
No, totally.
But
no,
you know what
I
I'm saying,
agree.
right?
I cannot manufacture a vaccine at sufficient purity and quantity that I can distribute it to people and everybody be safe, right? I just can't.
I take a vaccine.
People are going to get hurt. No, I appreciate it, but I just mean that on scale, right?
Yeah.
We
Stuff is going to get contaminated.
Really thirsty right now.
Stuff is going to happen. For me, myself, I can follow all these protocols and do everything. That's why one of the big problems with the vaccine is they have these super cold fridges for some of the vaccines, so the freezers, so they can store it properly and do all this stuff. There's no way a person can sell a vaccine out of their house and it can scale in any way and make sure people are safe. So I agree. Mass distributed medicine, it needs some sort of regulation, right? Just because we don't want people to get contaminated stuff, right? That's just, there should be some regulation. But I think there's also this huge opportunity for people trying new stuff. And there's so many people out. I get contacted by so many people every day who are just hey, I have this illness, I have this disease, I want to try something. I don't care. There's so many people who are I'm dying, I want to try something. I don't care what the consequences are. I'll sign any sort of waiver or disclaimer or whatever. But still, it's not legal. I could go to. I've already been investigated by the California Medical Board. I won, but they investigated me for practicing medicine without a license, and I purposefully avoid all these things because I could go to jail for it. But all these people are willing to try stuff, and it could push science and medicine so far forward faster if we just let them. If you had a medical doctor who could oversee it, I'm not saying have randos do stuff. No, medical doctors can't oversee this stuff because they'll lose their license. If somebody wants to be like, I'm going to try this gene therapy on myself to see if it cures me. If the medical doctor participates, they're going to lose their license.
So
let's just say,
yeah, go ahead.
Let's make that to start out, like, just say medical doctors can help people try new stuff, right? That would advance stuff so far forward.
Yeah, so if you were to design like a perfect setup for how to incorporate the newest technology, the latest stuff that you're working on into like safe studies, what would a safe study look like from your end?
Man, I hate when people ask this question because I'm like libertarian / don't like the government or like structure.
Yeah, I can tell.
So like, I'm not the person to ask because I'm just like burn everything to the ground.
So I guess what I'm saying is that if there are like-minded people like you, and if you were left to your own devices, you would inevitably come up with some pretty amazing things. You might also come up with some things that, not everything is going to be a hit. You're going to have some things that don't produce the intended results that might be dangerous to people. And so it's a good idea to have certain guardrails in place to make sure that it's not just like everything can't be totally open sourced when it comes to medicine. Or if you disagree with me, that's fine. But that's kind of the standpoint I'm coming from. All right, before we get too far into this, Billy, you want to talk to us about a nutrition program because you're my dietitian.
Look, so I've been doing a lot of research and I've concluded that the best meal prep choice for us is Trifecta. So Trifecta plans all your meals. It's created by chefs, nutritionists to help people get into the best shape of their lives. Trifecta makes meal preps not suck. All our meals are backed by nutrition science and taste great, making it simple to get into the best shape of your life. So, they make ketosis meals and I've been eating them. I got sent them. They're amazing. I literally, the hardest thing about ketosis is knowing what's keto and what's not. With Trifecta, it's all set up for you already. And literally you could eat 1,000 of these meals and you'll end up still losing weight because of ketosis. And Trifecta does a great job planning the meals out. So shop meal plans, and to get 40% off meal prep with code DOSE, DOSE, go to trifectanutrition.com/dose for this exclusive offer.
Yeah, no, I agree, right? There needs to be some sort of regulation. But I think, I don't think it really depends. I think what's going to happen in the future is we're going to see a lot of people do medical tourism and just travel to countries. I've gone to other countries and talked to medical doctors in other countries. There's a number of like developed countries, Colombia and South America, the Dominican Republic, and places that have infrastructure, medical doctors, and all these people. And the countries are willing to let people come and try stuff. They don't have like an FDA and they don't have like a medical patent system, right? But they can provide standard of care in terms of, there's a doctor there and medicine and quality. And it's just finding people you can trust, right? Like I wouldn't trust me.
Billy trusts you.
Yeah, that was the biggest red flag.
Now I gotta ask, you injected yourself with gene therapy to, myostatin inhibitor to create more muscle mass. Did you get gains? Or did you get muscle mass gains?
No, so like I didn't inject the goal of the injection. A lot of people assume the goal of the injection was for me to get bigger muscle. And you can still find the video on the internet, or if you watch the documentary Unnatural Selection on Netflix, it's a really good documentary. And I'm like one of the main characters, and they document this process. Like my goal was to just show how inexpensively you can make it and how that it was safe, and like why weren't people doing this. I didn't get any gains, unfortunately, but I would have had to inject a lot more DNA. I would have had to, maybe do multiple courses, but CRISPR is not the best. There's easier ways. So there are other gene therapies. If I just wanted to grow big muscles, there's a gene therapy called follistatin that they've given for people with Becker muscular dystrophy. And it's funny because when at the site of the injection, it just grows like a muscle, like this bump that's just like a muscle. It just turns into, there's pictures. It's crazy. So there are gene therapies I think that's also the future of sports, and I would be surprised if some people aren't doing gene therapies to get ahead in sports.
Bron.
If anybody wants to, he's got a lot of money.
TB12.
Contact me.
Really?
Tom, he's not yoked.
That's kind of a good segue to like a question that we were kind of like kicking around before you came on, but kind of the ethics of this whole thing, right? And I think I'm a little bit of an outlier in the sense that I think that not only is it ethical to start experimenting on this, but I think it's our moral responsibility too, because I think this is the future of our species. And how I see my perfect in my head, my perfect society is like a Star Trek Enterprise, right? Where they're like the
Which one? The Next Generation or
I'm a Next Generation guy. I mean, I don't know about you. You next my guy, all right. But I envision a society where the to me like the nonsensical day-to-day politics is out of the way, and we just focus on exploration and art, and like to me that's in the sciences. And so to me in my head, when I think of genetic engineering, this is kind of the liaison to that. It's the we're kind of figuring out how to hack our environment in a way that gives us the most positive and healthy benefits going forward in exploration in this universe.
Yeah, no, some people always like to bring up like, Hitler eugenics or stuff like that. I'm like, why is that even the conversation? And it's interesting because I was working on a project for a little while and I never really finished it or it came to fruition. And it was using this gene called tyrosinase. And tyrosinase, basically what it does is it helps produce the precursor to melanin. So basically you could change your skin color, right? And some people might think, oh, that's crazy or weird or something like that. But if you show people that like, is the single gene that's responsible for something like skin color, like I think it's a lot harder to be racist and stuff like that, right? Because people are just like, damn, what am I going to blame it on? I can't blame it on anything else. I know it's this gene that causes the overproduction of melanin, and I've seen people do it to themselves or something like that, right? And I think that's this whole thing with
genetic blackface.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is like you're figuring out medical ways to put Instagram filters on your body.
But it's like, I think the diversity would increase so much that it would be crazy. We would see so many different things. People think that it would like narrow the gene pool down, but I don't think so. I think it would grow it and it would be way more interesting, right? Here's the thing is that like humans don't evolve that much anymore, right? Like we don't evolve, and we evolve in small ways, but not really. We're probably not going to get any more different. But now we have these tools like CRISPR, right? We can choose the genes. No human has ever been able to do that, right? Like literally choose genes that they want inside their body, their child's body, or something like that. You can choose that. And I think that's going to change a lot. I think it can make sports crazy. I've thought a lot about it, and you think about like, you could have sports teams where people have been modified all crazily, and maybe you could, when they have like when they have sports for like wheelchair basketball and stuff like that, they have like point systems, right? If you can use both hands, if you can use one hand, how many limbs and stuff like that you can use. There's point systems of how many points each team can have on the floor at one time. And you can do that with genetically modified sports, right? Like that guy he's got 6 arms, so he's like worth 5 points, and this person has 2 arms, so they're worth 1. I think we could make.
Honestly, that's the thing I never understood about like performance enhancing drugs. I'm like, why would you not want the most enhanced athletes ever? Like when I watch sports, right, and I was an ex-professional athlete, right? Well, I am an ex-professional athlete. Like, but like now, I have no interest in doing any kind of sports. I'm done. I'm good with that. But like now, when I want to watch sports, like I want to see some shit that I can't do at all, and I'm not interested in doing, but I want to be entertained by it. Like I don't understand why people like the purity of there's no such thing. There's no such thing.
And like I said, like, you know, and a lot of these athletes, I bet if they went and sequenced the genome of a lot of these people, I bet you they have genetic mutations that make them like extra specially good at something. Right?
Like, don't get me wrong. Watching a wide receiver that has 6 arms sounds pretty cool. But if you're that wide receiver, like after you retire, then you just walk around with 6 arms all the time. Like, you have to admit that when you're talking about that stuff and how it's going to affect sports, you do sound a little crazy. Was I the only one thinking that when you were talking about like the scoring system?
I'm 1,000% with him. I'm 1,000% with you, dog. Because I'm just like,
I'm not worried. You're not the first person to call me crazy, so I'm cool.
I think we think of sports like, I mean, if you look at like when basketball was invented, right, and like the old school footage of like Bob Cousy coming down, like he's backing somebody down at half court and shit, like that shit boring, shit whack. The evolution of sports is going to be the evolution of the rules of the sports. It's going to be the evolution of the players of the sports. And if nothing we ever learned of anything about humans is we evolve, and like the evolution of sports
things
change.
If you put Kyrie back then, they'd burn him at the stake because they assume he was a witch.
Yeah,
no question.
I would be very excited to see though, like the takes that people would have about like back in my day. Football was tougher back when guys only had 2 legs.
The wing tee.
Yeah, exactly. Like guys trying to like justify.
They only had normal genes.
Yeah, their sports was better.
Loser.
It's like
they have all these genetic enhancements.
Yeah, you could not compete against a quarterback with 3 heads. Like it's just at the end of the day, that's a fact.
Like the way you're talking about this. It's making it sound like everyone will have access to that. And I know that's a goal of yours, but that's probably not the reality, right?
I mean, with everything, it's not the reality, unfortunately, right? But I think, like you said, one of my goals is to make this technology available to everybody. It doesn't matter, you know, kind of whatever you do, wealthy people are going to always co-opt everything and make it theirs first. And that's hard. Maybe not. Maybe you can start a big enough movement in biohacking where people start genetic. And you know what? Like, it's crazy because if you think about all the people who've been genetically modified basically outside of medical environments have all been biohackers and people like that. And so they're really pushing the boundaries of like non-medical enhancement. So maybe they will be the first ones and cause it to grow all the non-medical enhancement stuff. And it will be really accessible.
What would you consider to be the biggest success that the biohacking community has had?
The biggest success in terms of like experiments?
Yeah, what's the experiment that you've done that has the highest benefit? What's the thing that you can like point to and be like, here's why biohacking is good?
The highest benefit. Yeah, you know, you can think about it. I like to think about it in terms of like cool, but you know, benefit also. Like obviously, you know, a lot of the experiments I did. So start off with like the gut hack one. It was interesting because at the time everybody said like this is such an unscientific experiment when I replaced the bacteria in my gut, and like nobody will care about it and it's not scientific. And no joke, I'm not even joking about this. I was on Facebook and I saw this ad for this biotech company and my face pops up. And a huge biotech company, Novo Nordisk. And it said that like Josiah's experiment transplanting bacteria in his gut was like, you know, an inspiration for us to work on all these medical stuff. And I was like, number one, where's my money? Like, where'd you get permission to use me in this ad? But number two, I was like, wow, you know, this is actually affecting a lot of stuff. I think a lot of times the repercussions are down the line with this, you know, coronavirus vaccine thing. You know, right now it's kind of being buried on the internet and stuff like that. Though it was extremely well documented. I think like 10 or 15 years from now, people are going to be like, holy shit, you know, like we created we synthesized and, you know, had a company manufacture the vaccine and everything for us, and did the experiment and had it done. You know, I had a vaccine before anybody, right? Like, we're talking August or something like that. Like,
Jesus,
last year.
I get like free validation for parking sometimes. Like,
wait, but you're talking about the vaccine you made, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't. The problem is the reason nobody knows is because I didn't make one of those cards that I could take a picture of and hold on social media.
Oh yeah, I got one of those.
Like nobody knows about it.
I got one of those. I haven't talked about it except like on every podcast I've been on, but I've only talked about how I won't talk about it to get the clout. But I love the vaccine clout chasing. It's one of my favorite things. And you know what? If it makes people get more vaccines, great, good.
Yeah, you know, I'm not against vaccines at all. I had mine first, though.
just a couple questions. Hold
on, bro. What a fucking flex. I had my vaccine first because I made it. That's fire, dog. All right, go ahead, man.
That's what I'm saying, though, right? Like, you know, there's so many cool things that we're doing and working on here. Are the people behind me that you see working, you know, part of the Odin, my company. You know, there's so many cool things that we're working on all the time and making and doing. Like, the impact is huge, and it's just either people don't see it or don't recognize it or don't understand it yet. But like, we are literally training a generation of science. People are doing science in their homes. And we also sell to schools and universities and stuff like that. We are trying to train the next generation of genetic engineers. So it is a thing that we can engineer ourselves.
Wow. Well, just a quick question. How is your health? Like, you've done all these things yourself. Do you feel like you've improved your body for the better?
Yeah, I think so. But like, my health, oh gosh, you know, that's something that I always fight against. And it's also hard, like, experimenting on yourself because, you know, like, even just taking the vaccine that you didn't make yourself is hard on the body. And then you imagine, like, the one you did make, and you're drawing your blood like all the time and stabbing yourself with needles and all this stuff. And it's just like, each experiment takes a bit out of you, you know. It's hard on the body. So usually now it's got to be something that I'm really inspired by. But my health is good, but yeah, self-experimenting is a bitch, and I don't like to do it.
I do like the concept of a farm to table, like a bespoke vaccine for everybody. Yeah, tell me about your personal preferences when it comes to vaccines. Yeah, Bill, you had another question?
Just wondering, what experiment do you feel was, you know, your favorite, or you got the most utility and benefit out of doing, like, hacking yourself?
Well, my favorite experiment actually was one of the first experiments I did. And I actually built a musical instrument that used, like, genetically engineered protein nanotechnology to play music. And it was crazy because I don't play music. I never built a musical instrument or knew how to, or even really knew what, like, you know, notes and all this other stuff were. But I had this idea in my head. I was working with this technology in graduate school, and I was like, I get to experience this myself using this big fancy pieces of equipment, but like, I want other people to experience it because I think it's really cool and beautiful and unique. But like, how can I get other people to experience it when they can't see it? It's so small. And I thought, well, what if I build a little device that can measure certain properties of it and turn that into music? So this protein, it's actually a protein that when you shine light on it, it vibrates kind of like a string, except quantum mechanically. And the vibration is just like a string. It'll go big and then it'll slowly die down and it'll return to a resting state. So what I figured out was that if I shine light on it and measure it, I could turn that vibration into a musical note and everything like that and have a musical instrument. And it blew my mind that I could take an idea in my head that didn't exist in the world, was impossible, I thought, and make it reality. And to this day, it's, you know, one of my favorite things that I've ever done. Yeah.
I got a question about that. What was it about the light that made it react to it? Like, was there?
So it actually, it has this molecule in it that was able to absorb the photon, right? and convert that into like electronic energy. This specific molecule is called a flavin molecule. Sometimes it's in like some vitamins and stuff, flavin mononucleotide or something like that. FMN, you might see it as. They're, I think some people say they're like oxygen radical scavengers or some other stuff. But yeah, it's just, it had the correct structure in the molecule that it could absorb this light.
So so listening to you, like a lot of what you say goes over everybody's head, right? And we just kind of nod along like, yeah, that makes sense. But so you have a certain depth of knowledge that a lot of us will never have. So can you give us a guideline? Like, all right, when I read the nutritional facts on the back of a food source, what am I looking at? Is that something that you even do or
No, like I don't do stuff like that. Science to me is more like, I try not to take it too seriously. To me, it's more like something that is beautiful. It's like sports, like we watch it because we see people do stuff beautiful. We do it because we want to also do these amazing things, right? We want to do something. There's nothing like, when you're playing a sport and you do something crazy, it's just like, it feels so good. It feels so good inside you. And science is the same way to me. It's more like something that I appreciate the beauty of than like I go home and I watch science documentaries and read science textbooks. Like I don't. I'm not like that. Like I don't care.
Could you isolate the clutch
talented
gene?
but lazy science edition?
Do you know what the clutch gene is?
People who are able to perform in the clutch, I imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. Could you isolate the clutch gene?
I don't know if it's. I imagine you could try, if it's possible. I imagine it has something to do with the way your body regulates hormones and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're stressed.
Yeah. It keeps your heart rate down, keeps you cool, keeps you focused in the moment. When other people would experience like severe anxiety, if you could figure out a way.
Somebody you want to give it to on your favorite team?
Just everyone. Yeah, literally everybody. I think all kickers in the NFL should be injected. Cody Parkey should have the clutch gene. Call me Cody. I have an email from a listener here. I'm not going to say his name, but it's a listener, Macrodosing. Says, hey, I'm 5'8". I tell people I'm 5'9", but I'm really 5'8". I could probably dunk if I was 6 feet tall. I've got good leaping ability. Is there some sort of growth biohacking that we have access to at this point where you can increase the reader's height?
People say stuff like this. I'm just like, do some push-ups and sit-ups. Remember those shoes that they used to sell a lot of in the 90s where they were just like in the front of, they had like a pad in the front of your feet.
I have those,
and they said they would make your
we had so many jokes about people who wore them shits, man.
The jump soles. Yeah, I've got those. They're supposed to make your calves stronger. That's biohacking. That's OG biohacking.
OG biohacking.
Yeah.
No, here's the crazy thing is that there are, certain things, I was telling you about this follistatin thing that you might be able to inject in your calf muscles. There are a bunch of gene therapies that they've tried for medical reasons that have direct application. Like EPO is a gene, right? Like you can literally inject people with a gene therapy for EPO and make them perform better. Or even crazier, there's this gene that they've studied for diabetes to increase the blood flow to legs. It's called VEGF. And like you could increase the vascularization of tissue so that like their muscles don't get tired as fast. So there are a lot of things that people could actually try. The thing is that like it's not allowed. And it's not available. It's hard, right? Because there are very few people who have the knowledge and skills to actually produce these things. And then there are very few people who are willing to pay the money to actually have it done on themselves. So right now there's like extremely limited market.
I do like how I was like, hey, I just want to grow 4 inches. And you're like, that is insane. Just do push-ups. And then you were talking about like a guy with no legs and 5 arms playing water polo as like the future of sports. And that's normal. That's something that we can do. Let's stay on earth here. So when it comes to like the future of athletes maybe injecting themselves with things like this, what's the danger? Like let's say somebody is a shitty scientist, they make, I don't even know how to explain. They make a bad batch of DNA.
Yeah, for sure.
And they inject it into themselves. What happens if you inject yourself with the wrong thing?
I mean, people have died from contaminated gene therapies, like even in clinical trials. That's the big thing, is that, it's sterile, it's not contaminated, and all this stuff. So people need to know how to handle it properly. It needs to be handled in the proper environment. It needs to be stored in the proper environment, and stuff like that. But otherwise, gene therapies are relatively safe. Like in the history of gene therapies that people have received, most of the deaths have been because of contamination, or they're just trying to use so much gene therapy. So in some of these muscular dystrophy type stuffs, where it affects the whole body, all the muscles in the body, they're just trying to dope people up with as much of these gene therapies as they can to help affect all the muscles in the body. And sometimes it causes liver toxicity and stuff like that. But actual gene therapies killing people, I don't know if there's any people who've been directly killed by the outcomes of a gene therapy. It's more like the secondary effects.
Okay.
I have a question, man. Earlier in the pod, PFT alluded to something like this, and I'm interested to get your take on it. So like malaria, right? Malaria, human beings' reaction to malaria was sickle cell, right? It protected people from getting it. So conversely, if we, let's say we cure some of these ailments, right? Do you foresee any issues with something gone haywire because we cured it? Like, in the ecosystem, like an example of like if you take a certain species out, like there's too many predators or whatever the case may be. Do you see any kind of that?
That's a really interesting thought. And I think those things are just super hard to predict is the problem, right? You don't know what the outcomes of some of this stuff is. But I think like eradicating disease, right? At least you're eradicating the disease. And then if something else comes up, at least we can try to figure out how to overcome that. Like everything evolves constantly, right? We're constantly in a battle with viruses and bacteria and animals and plants and everything. We're all evolving together in this ecosystem. And so, like, of course, things are going to evolve, when humans change. It's just part of the process.
I agree. Second part it's loosely related. Do you think, and if you do, to what extent are we dropping the ball on like cancer research, or just like pulling the trigger?
100%. I think we are dropping the ball 100%. There's so many different things. Years ago, people used to email me about cancer all the time, and I got involved with a bunch of people who had cancer. We even created a DIY guide for people who have lung cancer on how they could manufacture this drug, this super cutting edge drug, have companies manufacture it for them, and then try it on themselves. Since then, I've been in contact with a bunch of people who have had drugs manufactured, taking stuff. This is from scientific research papers also. They're not just like making stuff up out of thin air. They see a scientific research paper that says like, we tried this drug and it seemed to have an effect. And they're like, all right, can I get the drug from the drug company? And the drug company says no. And they say, all right, fuck it. I'm going to go to some manufacturing company and just ask them to make it for me and pay them like 10 grand. And so like, there are so many things to try. And there's so many people who are trying different things out there, because like, if you get lung cancer, there's like one or two things, if maybe Keytruda helps this, checkpoint inhibitor, but otherwise, like, your prognosis is terrible. Like 95% of people die within 5 years or something, right? And like, what are you supposed to do? Just sit there and die? And that's what society wants. That's what the medical system and the regulatory system wants, just you to sit there and die. instead of just being like, you can try stuff. Let's try all these drugs on you and see what works, or just like something.
So you got a magic wand, the magic Josiah wand. You can fix the medical system to where you feel is the most beneficial. What do you do?
Yeah, I make it so that people can try. Like, people can just like sign a waiver or something to be like, I want to try this thing. Let's try this thing, right? I think it would have a huge impact, and also take the financial incentive out of drugs, right? The reason a lot of these drug companies won't let people try these cutting edge drugs, because if they die, their stock price is going to plummet, right?
Oh my God,
if they have a side effect, the stock price is going to plummet. So like, they, only want people to try drugs. People don't understand, like, clinical trials. They're not just like, oh, you have this disease, you can come to clinical trial. No, nowadays they screen you for everything. They want the exact person who they think is going to benefit from this drug, so it gets approved by the FDA, right? So like, it's limited. It's limited sometimes in its use and its scope, right? We don't even have to talk about like different races and ethnicities trying, drugs being tested on them, because it's just like, it's not happening, right? Like, the scope of the medical system is so small, and it's fully incentivized by money, that it's just, we need to change that.
All right, I got two questions for you, and then I think we gotta let you run. We've been hogging your time this afternoon. Went on a little bit longer than we thought. Billy, unless Billy has something that you really want to bring up. Billy, is it about frogs?
Yeah, I want to make a giant frog.
Billy just wants it.
What's
it's
your
on the record.
plan? I have a question for Billy. What's your plan with the giant frog?
Yeah,
what you
Well,
doing?
I
This
agree.
big
Look,
ass
no,
frog.
seriously, this is what I would do. I would get an African bullfrog, which is totally legal in the pet trade, and I'd get them huge regularly because they look like Jabba the Hutt, and then I would use the gene therapy that Josiah has used on other species of frogs, and he would literally probably be like as big as like a small dog. Yeah.
Billy likes frogs. He just
What would you
doesn't
do with it,
think
though?
that
Just
they're
keep it
big
as a
enough.
pet?
I would have him as a pet. It would be
Oh my
sick.
gosh, it'd be interesting to see how that thing jumps. Like,
Yeah.
oh my
So can
god.
we make it happen?
So serious.
This is how you get to Jurassic Park.
There's
Big
I know,
frog.
but the
that's
thing is,
possible.
we
I'll tell you what. You set up the GoFundMe to raise the money for the gene therapy, and I'll help you make it.
how
How
much
much
would
do
it
we
cost?
need? How much do we need?
How much for the gene therapy? For enough? Well, so you probably want to inject a couple frogs to try out different stuff and see what would happen. I would say you could probably do a pretty decent size experiment for like 10K.
For the pod, we gonna get this done.
Yeah.
baby.
Can we expense this?
Well, Billy, you just won $50,000
Yeah.
for knocking out Jose Canseco, and I know that money's burning a hole in your pocket.
Yeah, how bad do you want big frogs?
I will set up this GoFundMe. If we get to 9,000, I'll put a K in there, bro. I promise y'all want to see. I
I
promise
mean,
y'all want
they
to see.
said they said don't spend your money on anything stupid, but I think this would actually be great for the world. I think this is well worth it.
bullfrog. Oh god,
This
But
is
what-
classic.
the thing is, it's a dumber thing than anyone would have ever thought to warn you about not blowing your money on.
This is literally so smart. That, like this is the smartest thing I could do with the money.
PFT, think
Then
about
you'd have to see. Here's the thing: is you'd probably take another 10K to invent like frog leashes and stuff like that, so you can take it on a walk. And
Yep.
How much food would this thing eat?
Dude,
cross that
I'd
bridge.
feed it
We'll cross that
rabbits,
bridge.
bro. They already eat mice. They're so big.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Think about-
Have you ever seen an African bullfrog?
I'm sure I've seen pictures, but
Pixphilius adpersus is a Latin name. They're insane. Anyway.
All right, no more frog talk, man.
Yeah.
Okay. I got two more questions, and we'll let you go. Do you want the hard one or do you want the fun one first?
let's end with the fun one.
Okay, we'll end with the fun one. So the hard one is, I don't really see that much of a problem with people doing these experiments on themselves with an understanding of what they're getting into. Like you mentioned, terminal patients. If they're looking for any way that they can possibly extend their life or be cured, I totally get that. I get even people who are curious, like yourself, and you're like, I wonder what will happen if I give myself like one giant arm. That's, if you want to do that to yourself, I think that's cool, and it'll probably lead to some cool discoveries later on down the line. Where do you draw the line when it comes to something that could alter the offspring, a child that you might have that might inherit some of the things that you've put into your own body? Because for me, that's where the ethics come in, where it's like, that's not something that the kid signed up for. And this doesn't even have anything to do with kind of the course of humans evolving their DNA, like we talked about earlier with sickle cell. This is just like that particular child did not have a say in what you were doing to your system because you were curious or bored one day, you know? So like where do you draw the line when it comes to something that might be inherited?
Yeah, that's of course, it's a really tough question. And I don't exactly know. It's different for everybody. But for me, like with kids and stuff like that, the parents already make a lot of choices for them, right? Sometimes even, and, you think about environment in terms of what they eat, things like that do affect their body, the way they grow, their education, all these different things, right? Which do affect them into everything we think about, the way that like a gene therapy or something could affect them. Me personally, if gene therapy was available and reliable, I would use it on my children. Obviously, I would want my children to be as healthy as possible, right? Not suffer from illness or disease, and be as capable as they can be. Like, I'm not saying I want super children or the best children in the world who are the smartest or anything like that, but like, gosh, like, I care about my kids. I want them the best for them in every single thing, right? Every single thing. If I could give the best to my children, I would want that. And I don't think this would change it. I think it's scary. I think it's different. I don't think it's societally accepted yet, but like, I want the best for them.
So I guess the best becomes a subjective conversation where some parents would say, like, I think that blue eyes are the best for my kid. And then every parent that's able to afford blue eyes for their children.
Here's the thing, you can already select eye color, right? You can select sex. If you have IVF done, you can already select things like sex and eye color and things like that, right?
Seriously?
Yeah.
He doesn't lie, Billy.
He doesn't lie to you, Billy.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
So this is a subset of that, and I know we said it was the last question, but I just have to intervene because it's just you can answer with a simple yes or no if you want to, but I'm just fucking fascinated at what you think about this. Because when I think about free will, I don't really think we have free will, because with what our genes are and how we have no control over the environment that we grow up in, exactly the thing that you said, I don't really think that we have free will. I just want to know what you think about free will. I
agree. We're predisposed to so many things, right? I think a big thing is like obesity, drug addiction, stuff like that. Like, I think a lot of these people don't have control over that stuff. We look at it and we like to blame them and all this stuff and be like, why don't you exercise more? Or why don't you get off of drugs or all this stuff? I think like people, especially athletes or people who do stuff, like, where does motivation come from, right? It's not like some people pull this will from inside themselves from this magical area and are like more motivated. No, like, it's genetic, right? It comes from your environment, but it's also genetic. A lot of these things are genetic, and you are, I don't want to say enslaved or imprisoned, but you are by your genes, right? Our genes control us, right? Your actions that you take, you can blame a lot of the stuff on your genes. And it's
will do.
will do.
Get out of jail free card. All right, but my last question is, it's one I've been thinking about for a while, because we talk about recreational drugs on this podcast a fair amount, and it seems to me like most of the good drugs out there provide just a shitload of dopamine right into your brain. Is there a drug? Could you actually just straight up get dopamine,
free-base dopamine,
in a vial? Could you put your own? Could you harvest your own dopamine from your own body and then inject that into yourself and then just feel great?
I had a better idea, So like, also, you guys should get Hamilton Morris on this podcast if you have. I don't know if you guys know who Hamilton Morris is, but him and I have talked about this a little bit, and it's this project I was interested in. Where, endorphins, like. Endorphins are actually a protein molecule that your body produces that gives you this feeling of high. And they've shown that you can take endorphins and inject them into the bloodstream, and people actually get high. And you can also measure it by measuring this hormone prolactin. so you can measure the highness of people. So I did like basic experiments on this, like measuring my prolactin levels and different things like that. But theoretically, you could create a gene therapy where you like inject yourself with some DNA. And DNA, the cost to produce DNA is so insignificant, right? And it would produce this beta endorphin, and it would get you high. And so you could give people this DNA, and it would be undetectable. Governments couldn't stop it. It would be like the perfect drug.
Yeah.
That's why you got off YouTube, bro.
But would the brain become less build up a tolerance to
it?
dopamine?
I'm sure it would eventually. I've never tried this completely yet. I just, did the baseline measurements and designed the DNA and stuff. I just haven't gotten around to like, it's a tough experiment to do, right? Because like you just basically got to inject yourself with stuff and just wait for like a couple days and see if you get it.
Yeah. Just taking notes in a journal. I like the idea though. Like, let's cut out the middleman here. You don't need heroin. You don't need opiates. You don't need cocaine. You don't need marijuana. Like, just get to the good stuff, the pure, uncut
your
dopamine.
body naturally produces, right?
Yeah.
And like DNA,
dopamine.
You can literally. So the way most people replicate DNA is they put it into bacteria. So there's lab strains of bacteria that you put the DNA into, and you just grow up a bunch of the bacteria, and then you just break them open and extract the DNA. So you could make this DNA with just sugar and water. Like you could make large quantities of it with just sugar and water.
I'm taking whatever drug you're making, dog. Let me know.
Cheap, undetectable, like government's worst nightmare.
Could sneak it into any venue. Absolutely. Let's do it.
My last question, is there anything that you take, Josiah, that's like a supplement or something that you truly believe the science and it like improving like your cognitive behavior, your physical abilities or anything like that?
Cannabis.
Yeah.
His buddy's shit.
Or like a nootropic of some sort.
One of the best, it's so underappreciated, but like one of the best and most well-studied drugs is caffeine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, obviously people who consume caffeine see the performance enhancement that it has. And it's been shown across everything, right? Like sports, intellectual activities, like caffeine is a really great drug. But besides that, I'm not really into like testing other chemicals and substances and stuff like that to try to improve my performance. I'm cool with where I'm at, like.
I like that.
Yeah, you're doing well.
You're doing you. It's the most powerful drug there is knowledge. That's what my teachers told me. They were liars, by the way. That was total bullshit when they said that. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. That was a really interesting conversation. Appreciate having you on, Dr. Zayner. Good luck with everything, and please unblock Billy. He just wants to talk about frogs.
I don't even know. I'll try to find how to. Sorry, Billy.
He'll tweet you.
Billy, well, he's blocked. So Billy, you want to
You'll
just
get
tell
tagged
him?
a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What's your handle, Billy?
Billy Hot Takes.
Billy Hot Takes.
Billy Hot Takes.
I'll email it
hot
to you.
takes at me the whole time.
I'll email it to you. We'll get Billy back in your day-to-day timeline checks.
No, I won't bother you again.
All right, thanks for joining us, man.
That.
Thank you, brother.
Right on, guys. Thanks for having me.
See ya. That interview is brought to you by our great friends over at BetterHelp at Barstool Sports. We truly love and appreciate our listeners. Without you, none of us would be able to do what we do every day. So once in a while, we try to bring you something good. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it's not. We're going to get serious for a second because this last year has been hard on a lot of people. So that's why we're doing something new, and we're partnering with our new sponsor, BetterHelp Online Therapy. There's a misunderstanding about what therapy is. It can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be sitting around talking about your feelings. I had a therapist. I went to go see a therapist after I experienced some loss in my life a few years ago, and it helped me get through it. It helped me figure out how to manage my emotions. It made me feel better, most importantly. It can help make you feel better too. If you're battling with your temper, if your stress is too much to manage, if you have depression, anxiety, if you have PTSD, the list goes on. If this is you, you can use therapy to get some tools that will make your life easier. When everyone's struggling with something, there's no more shame. You don't have to tell everyone your personal business, but you can talk to a therapist about it privately. Can't stress this enough. If you guys feel like you're dealing with something in your life that is making your mental health less than optimal, if you are struggling with anything, talking to a therapist can help a lot. I am personally giving a testament to you, letting you know it helped me get through a tough point in my life. It can help you too. BetterHelp can help you out. It's customized online therapy, offers you video, phone, even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy. You can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and our listeners get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/dose. That's BetterHelp.com/dose. I don't even care if you guys say that we referred you. If you're feeling something, you feel like you need help, I want you guys to feel comfortable going to BetterHelp, and we're going to give you 10% off if you do. The promo code is betterhelp.com/dose, but most importantly, take care of yourself. That was interesting. I think that guy's like 60% full of shit, 40% brilliant. That's my initial reaction.
I think that motherfucker brilliant, dog. That motherfucker's brilliant, dog. That was one of my favorite conversations I've had. I really enjoyed that.
He's very anti-establishment, but he has so much knowledge.
Like rationally though. He's not like super. Yeah. I think he has all these ideas, and he just wants to get them all out, and he just tries it all.
Yeah.
I think the anti-establishment probably comes too, like he said he worked at NASA and that it was just a bureaucracy that moved really slow. So I'm sure it's just out of like frustration from seeing it up close.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What did you think, Coley?
I think there's a whole nother conversation to be had there, like about the endocannabinoid system, like and how that truly boosts human performance. Like it's something that's only been studied since 1992. Like we've merely scratched the surface of what marijuana like practically does to the human body.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to ask him about this neurotransmitter, like electromagnetic brain therapy thing that I bought on a whim on Saturday. It's one of those halos that goes around your head and it just fires electrical impulses into your brain, and it's supposed to make it faster. I don't know. It sounded cool, so I bought it.
I don't think you can call that guy out for bullshit after you bought that.
Yeah, I know. No, that's just how high functioning my brain is right now, where I've evolved past the point of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy doesn't even, I don't bat an eye at that shit anymore.
I would like to live in a world though where like you can trace like MVP baseball player Jose Canseco being the reason giant frogs took over the world. Wow. Like that, we're not real far away from that being reality.
It's a fact.
We're closer than we should be.
He has the tech. He can do that because he's done it with smaller frogs. I'm just bringing him like a naturally large frog.
I'm so down to start this GoFundMe. I don't know the ethics behind the GoFundMe.
It wouldn't even be
like
that hard.
But I think we should get it done, dog.
Billy has the 10 grand.
Yeah,
like, we don't need to be funding this.
Aaron, you keep asking our listeners to fund Billy's frog experiments. This is on Billy's shoulders. Billy will find a way to make it happen.
Guys, I kind of put the money in a Roth IRA. I can't touch it.
You're a liar. It went straight to Dogecoin.
No, it did. I can't touch it.
You can, just a little.
But then I get It's
how bad do you want these frogs?
I literally threw it in like right after because I didn't even want to touch the money.
You don't want the frogs, bro.
We should have asked him a question from Big T. What question do you think Big T would have asked that guy?
Have you found Jesus' DNA? Oh my gosh. That would actually be an interesting question. His thoughts on like, because he's like when you know like that, like when you know the human body and the makeup to that extent, but then you hear so much folklore of like what a soul is. Like I would want to know his thoughts on like, what do you think about when you hear a soul? Like what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, guys, the God particle. I forgot to bring that up at the beginning of the show. They discovered that particle.
Yeah. So
Every time they have a new particle, they call it the God particle.
Because like they can't explain it.
Yeah.
Well, they're probably just making shit up so that they continue to get funding. That's exactly. I think we talked about this last time. That's exactly what I would do. Just be like every 6 months, guess what? We found God again. But yeah, Billy, what is What is the newest God particle? I'm sure you've done more research on that than I have.
Electrons, protons are all influenced by some like these tiny particles that they can't really explain.
Dark matter?
These were called fat protons.
Let me
PHA.
Yeah, I still got the article pulled up because I was reading it the
Yeah.
other day, and it just did not click with my brain at
That's
all.
a tab that will live on your computer for months at a time. Like you'll get around to it eventually.
Oh, we should have a segment
tiny
like that.
particles.
Random tab you still have pulled up. That should be funny.
Tiny particles wobble could upend the known laws of physics. Is this what you were talking about, Billy?
yeah.
And so that's just interesting. And so like when I read up a little bit, but like there's like the mass that they calculate in the universe, there's more mass that they calculate that's out there than we can see, right? And so that's why they coined it dark matter. And so they theorize that there is particles that don't interact with what we know, like light, gravity, stuff like that. There's particles that don't interact, but has an effect on gravity. Like, it's interesting shit. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but
Yeah, these are called muons. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. MUONS. It says they are an unlikely particle to hold center stage in physics, sometimes called fat electrons. So I was wrong about that. Fat electrons, they resemble the familiar elementary particles that power our batteries, lights, and computers and whiz around the nuclei of atoms. They have a negative electrical charge, and they have a property called spin, which makes them behave like tiny magnets. They are 207 times as massive as regular electrons. They're also unstable, decaying radioactively into electrons and super lightweight particles called neutrinos. In 2.2 millionths of a second.
That's wow.
It's quick. Little lightning bugs. I'm looking through Billy's notes one last time here for the episode. He sent us 7 pages of notes. Great job as always, Billy. Now, 6 of those 7 pages are literally just pictures of strong things. No joke. There's one page is just a strong cow with
Belgian blue.
Another page is just a strong young child, just jacked up, lifting weights. Then there's strong mice and strong dogs. Again, another strong child born with extreme muscle growth. And then at the end, it's talking about the Chinese scientist that performed the experiment on the twins. So I think we covered all those bases, just girthy animals and then preventing HIV transmission.
Well, I think I just want to leave us with one last thing because, it's not like this is just all fun and games. Like here in February 2016, sorry, here we can. Biologist Kathy Niken and her team at the Francis Crick Institute wanted to better understand the role of a particular gene in the earliest stages of human development. So using CRISPR, they deleted that gene in human embryos that had been donated for research. When they analyzed the edited embryos and compared them to ones that hadn't been edited, they found something troubling. Around half of the edited embryos contained major unintended edits. There's no sugarcoating this, says Fyodor Urnov, a gene editing expert and professor of molecular and cell biology at the University of California, Berkeley. This is a restraining order for all genome editors to stay the living daylights away from embryo editing. So basically, like, at the end of the day, it's not all fun and games.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm for it.
Yeah.
Very
Edit all that shit.
Like, I hope there's not like some kid who's gonna go do something stupid because he's listening to this podcast.
Well, I don't know what. Even if you were a dumb kid, how would you like just order your DNA set online and then like make a DNA in your house like it's a fucking grade B rocket?
Yeah, if you in your closet, if you're in your garage and you over here editing genes, you're not a dumb kid, Billy.
Yeah, it's like 2 kids and they're doing their science project together. One's like, let's do the volcano with a baking soda. The other kid's like, no, let's inject ourselves with molecular RNA and see how big I can make my right kneecap.
Billy, how upset were you when he didn't get any gains from that injection?
Well, that's where it's kind of like, because basically the whole point, I think, was that he wanted to inject himself with CRISPR, but something that couldn't really fuck with anything too heavy, but just to show it was kind of there's an article saying he regrets doing it because it made people think he was like like a attention seeker and like looking for clout basically. But I think he does have his heart in the right place. But I think
he said that in an article that was being written about his experiments. He's like, I don't want to seem like I'm out here trying to get publicity.
No, but he said he regretted doing it on a live stream. Like so like people,
Yeah, again, I think that he's a brilliant dude. I think obviously like with his background in education and he's, performing some stuff on himself that I think some people are not crazy enough to do. But I also think that he hasn't really given a lot of thought, or maybe he has and he just doesn't have a good answer for it, about like the implications of what he does. So he's so fascinated in his own work that he's living kind of like day to day on it, trying to just do cool stuff. And he hasn't really thought that hard about like the ethical long-term things that are going to happen. But again, like I think he's a fascinating person to talk to.
Like I feel like, we're going to see in probably the next 20 years if like he's going to have serious impacts from his time. And hopefully he leaves the legacy, that maybe
of huge frogs
does improve the world how he wanted to.
The biggest frogs of all.
Big ass frogs.
And I will say, if I get diagnosed with terminal cancer, he's going to be like the first person I call. Just be like, give me the stuff that I can't get
so
yet.
fast.
Yeah, that's in my opinion. If you have some sort of terminal disease like that, like whatever you can get that you want to try, go for it.
Yeah.
I don't think that. Life. Yeah, it's your life, and as long as it doesn't affect, that's the one thing when we're talking about like your kids' lives and things like that. He kind of brushed that off. I was talking about like injecting yourself with something that's going to be passed along to your children. He's like, well, you pick what your kids eat anyways. I felt like that was kind of like a bullshit answer. If like I haven't really considered the implications of that too much. But
well, I mean, I'm gonna go to bat for him right quick because a lot of the times I see like if you see like a couple who has a weight problem, right? You'll see their kids are a little bit chunky as well. And so I think that's what he was alluding to, was that a lot of the things that we don't deem, or we kind of deem benign, it's just not important. Like, we eat McDonald's, is what it is. Those have extremely dangerous effects on your kids, the environment that you place them around, the normalization of diet, things like that. And so I think he was just saying like, we already do that on a different scale.
Right. And I think that's valid, but it doesn't really answer the question of like what's ethical to do in terms of like altering what your child's DNA, what they are. Because you can always put your kid on a diet, but you can't be like, hey, let me suck that DNA out of your system real quick.
He's arguing you can change it. Yeah. So it doesn't even matter.
And so let's say you're a Scientologist and you put your child and you say this is the way, and they grow up as a Scientologist and they over here stalking people all day. That's a form of what he's talking about. So I think there's degrees, and what's your point? You're not wrong, but I am an advocate of let's chop these genes up and get these super kids popping so we can go to the stars.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I think that's in that same vein, like passing something on to your kids that is it ethical? Like, let's say you have a genetic disorder, and if you have children, that child will also have the genetic disorder. Like, this is where CRISPR is like a huge, benefit, because it could get rid of that gene from getting passed on and like improve the child's life.
All I know is that there's some serious questions that people are going to have to answer, and no one's going to agree on anything.
Yeah.
So
by the way,
that's where he might be like secretly the smartest person ever, is just saying like, fuck it, let's do all of it anyways and go pedal to the metal, because we're never going to agree on how to handle this. Humans, we're never going to agree. There are too many strong opinions about how these steps should be taken, where we're just someone's going to hit the brakes on it pretty soon, because we won't be able to figure out a way forward.
And guys, think about this. You know who's probably doing the most of this testing? The Russians are probably definitely gene edited their athletes.
Yeah,
and they've because you can't test for it.
The Chinese,
they're only making hockey players though. Like, what a waste.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Chinese, well, the gymnasts and
Chinese
like,
are crushing at diving. Their dive team has probably been genetically edited for years and years. That's probably why they imprisoned that scientist that did the twins testing, because they're like, that guy. We want that guy just sitting in a state-run lab cranking out balance beam performers.
Dude, they even put a curler on PEDs on the Russian team.
Love
a
it.
curler.
Yeah.
Like,
Try to get
Jesus,
these medals,
like-
dog. They got to get this gold by any means.
What it comes down to is I think he wants to have the world be like as close to a video game as possible. You know? And like to a certain extent, I respect it. I
think I'm just over this reality in general. Like this shit's whack.
We
bro.
talked
just gotta
about this.
Trash.
You're still stuck in Avatar mode where you got done
1000%.
watching Avatar and you're like, fuck, why isn't the world like this?
I need my dreadlock to have tentacles, and I want to lock it with some shit, bro. I want to fuck the forest. No question.
All right, well, I think that probably covers most bases. I don't know. I didn't really have bases to cover today because it's just such a wild conversation to be having. But
Yeah.
I like the
great.
direction where it went. Billy,
Is that your
anything
big
else,
frog?
Billy?
It's my big dog.
All right, so that'll be it for us today. We love you guys. As always, constructive criticism is welcome, as long as you tell us that we're handsome while you're doing it. Next week, we were thinking about maybe doing data harvesting, data mining, online privacy, that sort of thing. Arian said the word Scientologist earlier. That could be something that we could get into. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Dude, we could, yeah.
I think data science is like a heavy one, and like it'll get like there's some funny points. I think we're gonna do it eventually, but I think Scientology is fucking hilarious, dog, and I think we got to tackle that shit.
And yeah, you know who else is a little more Scientology than people think?
Tom Cruise.
Mormons.
Yeah.
Mormons believe in like planets
Some-
and space
man,
shit.
there's some wild. They believe some
Special
wild.
guest
Yeah.
Tom Cruise coming on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tweet at Tom Cruise to come on the show
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, you know who is the lady from was it-
Leah Remini.
Yes, she like had this whole documentary on the shit, and like them motherfuckers are crazy. Like I'm talking about not even like CIA level type fucking with people, bro. Like it's
Oh,
wild.
yeah.
Good. Well, they sound like a great enemy for us to make.
Yeah, no, they make enemies real quick. So I have no problem with it. However, next Tuesday is 420.
Oh, yeah. Well, then,
Oh.
good point, Coley. That's the kind of foresight that we need. So I think we have to do the history of drug laws, the history of marijuana.
Or we could
Yeah, I mean,
do
it's a
some
layup
Chi.
for that day.
Yeah, I like that history of marijuana. Good point.
I like that. Yeah, we got to do
3 Chi episode.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good call, Coley. We'll save the Scientology stuff for later. And plus,
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
when we do that episode, just for the record, it's Big T's episode. It's his idea, and he's the one who's going to be piloting.
Big
the entire thing.
THC.
No. I'm talking about the Scientology one. I'm pointing.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
saying for the record, if anybody from the Church of Scientology is listening, it's Big T. This is his thing. He's got a weird axe to grind against you guys. I don't know why. So all complaints should be directed at him. But yeah, next week, I love it. Next week, the history of marijuana. Love you guys.